and welcome to 2G Education Teacher Training Academy. Koi here. Today I'll be looking at how to avoid making these 5 mistakes in the IELTS speaking test. It might sound a bit negative, but I know from my experience that not making these mistakes will increase your speaking band score. I'll be looking at the general mistakes that students make and how they can avoid them, along with the mistakes for each part of the test. That's parts 1, 2, and 3. Let's kick off with a general mistake or assumption that students often make, and that's, I'll get penalized if. Students often ask questions such as, will I get penalized if I ask the examiner to repeat the question? Or is it true I'll get penalized if I go off topic? Well, there are no penalties or minimum scores in the IELTS speaking test. You are simply graded according to the band descriptors, and there are no secret band descriptors. Moving on to part 1 mistakes, and that's when students try to memorize answers. In section 2 of part 1, the topics are either work studies or where they live. So students are tempted to memorize speeches about their jobs, their school, or where they live. This is always a bad strategy for 2 main reasons. First of all, examiners can easily recognize when students is giving a memorized speech, and they will often stop the student and try to move on to the next question. Another reason is that memorized speeches are not graded, so it's tempting, but never advise students to memorize a speech. Instead, encourage them to expand their topical vocabulary. In part 2 of the speaking test, students often believe, mostly because the teacher has told them, that they need to answer all questions on the prompt card. There is no IELTS rule or regulation that states that all prompts or question on the card must be answered. Students are expected to speak for 2 minutes, but if they do so by answering 1 or 2 of the questions or prompts, that's perfectly fine. In part 3, another mistake students should try to avoid is thinking the questions in part 3 are too intellectual or abstract. If they make the mistake, they often believe that they are graded according to the intellectual quality of their answers or originality of their thought. In reality, students are graded only on language and not original ideas, or so-called intelligence. It is true that part 3 questions ask students to speculate or predict, but after all, it's a language test, not an IQ test. One of the reasons they might think this is because they might have heard too many negative IELTS myths. So, in the test, this survival mentality means that students often give short answers, and they're unwilling to expand them. We should always encourage students to believe the IELTS test is an opportunity to show their English after many years of study, practice, and of course, expense. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching.